Hi there, welcome back to Rose Tinted Gaming. My name's Hunter, and today we're going to be continuing our playthrough of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Last time, we broke into police headquarters in Paris and avoided Carmelita Montoya Fox to secure a file containing all of the people who participated in the murder of our father. It's kind of a dark intro to a kid's game, but such is life. Today we're going to start our infiltration on the first of the Fiendish Five.
I've already plotted a...
The road trip gave me the time I needed to study up on Sir Raleigh the Frog. As a young man, this hot-tempered frog grew bored of his life of luxury and privilege. On a whim, he tried his hand at a bit of piracy and found it to his liking. Raleigh, who quickly became addicted to crime, was brought into the Fiendish Five as chief machinist, where his evil tinkering genius rose to new heights. The last reported sighting of this mad machinist was off the soggy coast of the Isle o' Wrath, a small island uncomfortably situated in the middle of the perilous Welsh Triangle.
Despite the fact that it's relatively short, I couldn't even begin to try and count the amount of times I've seen that cutscene in my younger years. Though as an adult, there are a couple things I want to mention. Firstly, it's unusual that halfway through the cutscene, Raleigh out of nowhere is suddenly a genius engineer. I mean, in his introduction, he's mentioned to be an affluent, privileged layabout. It probably would have made more sense if they mentioned that he had engineering as a hobby to keep him occupied, or maybe even that he blew his fortune on his experiments, which is what caused him to turn to piracy to fund them. It's just an idea. The other thing is, I think it is positively adorable that each act has its own special little name. It makes the game feel like you're playing through a comic book, which in itself matches the art style of the rest of the game. As a matter of fact, having act names is a tradition carried through each of the subsequent titles in this series. And yes, they are all ridiculous, and I love them to bits. Now let's talk about the actual level, yeah? Looking around, there's not much to see. We can see the van we came from, which, if we jumped into it, will take us back to the hideout should we so choose. And we see some shipwrecked boats. And that's about it. But that's kind of the point. The fact that your sightline is blocked by this wall is intentionally made to prepare a sort of Breath of the Wild moment, where when you leave the cave, the level you get to explore is laid out in front of you. Admittedly, the delivery falls a little bit flat here, as it only shows you the first small area, but in terms of art direction, it's a neat idea, and it's one that they do way better in just a bit ahead in the future.
Hey, Sly! I just spotted something that's going to complicate the mission. See that nasty-looking gate? It blocks the only road leading into Raleigh's hideout.
No problem. I'll just use my climb move.
Okay, but remember, you can only climb on certain objects, like pipes and ropes.
Yeah, sure, and like that ladder there?
That is correct, but do not forget, Sly. You have to get close.
Then hit the circle button to grab it. Yeah. Relax, Bentley. I live for this stuff.
Yeah, and that's what worries me.
Ah, yes. Another instance of jump and hit the circle button in action. If you'll notice, even Sly's fed up with it at this point. And this is only the second instance of this happening. And spoiler warning, this won't be the last time in this very level that it's mentioned. That aside, here's our Breath of the Wild moment I was talking about. 3 small areas. But even in that, you get to see good level design at work. You see, Bentley very clearly pointed out that the ladder over there is the way to go. But the way that the camera's positioned once you get control back points you over off in this direction, prompting exploration from the player. Now, I must have been a very goal-driven child because I didn't move off the beaten path for a surprisingly long amount of time. Luckily, we are not him, so let's go ahead and explore a bit.
Now this is very interesting. The message you just found appears to be some sort of clue. I'll decipher it here in the van. In the meantime, see if you can find any more clues. The more I have, the easier it'll be to crack the code.
So these clue bottles are strewn throughout every level. There's 20 in intro levels, and 30 in regular ones. If you get all of them, you unlock a safe that's normally found at the end of each level, and it contains a new move for you to use in your repertoire. I won't go into great length about finding all of the clue bottles in this playthrough, but we'll talk about this more when we get to this level's safe. For now, let's just have a look at this first enemy. He's very clearly a blue-collar worker for Raleigh, hence the overalls. But what exactly is he doing here? He just appears to be hammering nothing on this boat. He's outside of the gate, so this must be some sort of away mission. Perhaps he was sent here to tear down this ship some more? Maybe his goal is to dig into it and find any hidden treasures within. Unfortunately, when I approach, he attacks with immediate hostility, so I can't ever ask him what he's up to. We come now to this mast. I know I was going to mention we were going to save clue bottle shenanigans for later, but these are a special case. For the longest time, I had no idea how to get these two. They're way too high to jump up, and there doesn't seem to be any nearby terrain to get on like the other clue bottles in this level. In my child mindset, I was 100% convinced that I'd have to come back here with some future upgrades, as though this were some sort of Metroidvania. Even though that's absolutely how none of the rest of this game works. As it turns out, all you have to do is break this mast and the bottles come falling down. Who knew? Let's now move to the other side of the level, past the way we're meant to go, and towards something that has confused and perplexed me for more than half of my life now. This weird periscope has a single yellow eye in it that follows you wherever you move. It's never explained, and it doesn't come up again. This simple throwaway prop had its clutches wrapped around my child mind. Who is he? Is he underground? Why does he just sit there menacingly watching, not even daring to retreat when we notice him? This one bit of level design is partially the reason I wanted to start this series in the first place. This game is so jam-packed full of detail, and I'm finally taking the time to laboriously look through it all and examine bits of the game that very few people have likely thought about. On that note, if you have any ideas on what this guy exactly is about, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks about it. Anyways, over here we have some giant leaves to jump on, and a rope leading up to a ledge. This is an alternative entrance past the gate that also gives you some bonus clue bottles. Furthermore, if you go this route, you skip a small searchlight and tanglevine section, and a short cutscene from Bentley. The unfortunate fact of the matter is, though, that if you jump down from either here or the ladder route, there's no way of getting back, meaning that if you missed any clues on the way and didn't backtrack for the other routes, you're out of luck and have to restart the level to get them all. So let's hop on down and go the proper way.
Sly, see those searchlights? One careless step and you'll be subjected to acute combustion.
You done whining? Let's go.
I'm just trying to keep you alive, partner. Fortunately for you, I launched these signal repeaters throughout Raleigh's fortress. Get close to one and I can checkpoint your progress.
Nice.
So here we have our first introduction into checkpoints. These are everywhere in this game, and for good reason. This game is incredibly lethal. Barring a mechanic I'll mention when it comes up, everything in this game will kill you in a single hit. Which means that if you've ever beaten this game, feel free to call yourself an elite gamer. Those Dark Souls fans have been gatekeeping that term for far too long anyways. Regardless, what I really wanted to mention here is that the checkpoints have an in-universe reasoning, which adds slightly to the world building. Does it make any logical sense? No, not at all. Could they have just skipped explaining it and let the player assume what they were about? Yeah, probably. But is it better than saying jump and hit the circle button? Most definitely. Skipping past this trivial trap, we come to another enemy. This guy is clearly different from the guy we saw earlier. All the enemies actually in this game are referred to as guards in order to keep with the thief theme going on. But the other baddies seem to just be a simple tradesman, as are most of the other enemies in this world. This gentleman, though, is merely standing here, and upon approaching, he throws heat-seeking starfish at you. Which brings up an interesting question. Every animal we've seen so far in this game is sentient. Does that apply to these starfish as well? Perhaps these are actually ninja starfish, and this guard here is merely giving them a little momentum so that they can track down and end Sly. Up ahead we have another cutscene, but to set it up, I'm gonna try and stand next to this post, because when you do that, sometimes bees fly in front of the binocucom and they block the view a little bit, which I always find to be quite fun.
According to my amphibio positioning system, that big blimp is where Raleigh is hiding out.
You know, That blimp looks more like a machine than a hideout.
You're right, Sly. That is a storm machine. It's the reason why it never stops raining around here.
That explains all the wrecked ships.
But why would Raleigh want bad weather at his own hideout 24/7?
Beats me. But rain or shine, I'm gonna steal my family's book back. And if Raleigh gets in my way, it's on.
Here we have another bit of storytelling that I positively adore. At the beginning of this world, and every other, we get a brief insight into what the villain's plans are. In this case, we find that Raleigh has created a storm machine to cause shipwrecks all throughout the area. Why? Well, though you may have been able to guess by now, as you progress through the rest of the world, the villain's motivations are drip-fed to you in small doses. This, alongside a couple other reasons I'll bring up in later videos, help to keep the villain consistently in your mind, and I think that's brilliant. Also, during that cutscene, Bentley mentioned that he had an amphibio positioning system? That's kinda weird. Is that racist in this universe? It feels kind of amphibian racist. But I digress. Up here we have another workman, and this guy's great. He's a welder bro, he's welding a fence, he's doing his job, and he's clearly meant to be here. When you approach him, however, he blows into his torch, and it works exactly like a flamethrower. Which means, I guess, that this guy's breath must be made of pure methane? So, there's some world building for you, I suppose. Moving on, we have this small river section. If you try to just walk through it, you'd get swept away with the current. But if you spam jump, you get across just fine. I have no idea what this is supposed to teach the player. It's just there.
Nice job so far, Sly. To get over the next gate, you'll need to grab onto this hook using your cane. Just jump and hit the circle button.
Got it.
This part here is the reason I am almost certain I had a stroke at one point when I was small. Bentley tells you to jump and hit the circle button to grab the hook. This makes sense. Jump and hit the circle button does basically everything in this game. Furthermore, I had played through this level nearly hundreds of times at this point. I should know how to swing from hooks. But for some baffling reason, when I was a kid, I got it into my head that square was the button you press. You see, when you jump and press square, Sly swings his hook in such a way that it looks like it should hook on. Bentley even interjects again to remind you that you should jump and hit the circle button, and yet I spent like 20 minutes attempting it with square. To this day, I have no idea what the hell happened to me in that moment. Alright, this is just absurd. The last guy was welding a fence, that kind of makes sense. The guy before him might have been trying to break into that ship for hidden treasures. But this guy is hammering dirt. Dirt. Why, in any mindset, would he do that? Actually, come to think of it, these guys are significantly away from Raleigh's hideout. Maybe, just maybe, Raleigh has way too many people on his payroll to keep track of. And these guys are just out here, technically on the clock and committing wage theft. Come to think of it, Raleigh always stays in his storm machine. And I haven't seen any cameras around, unless you count the periscope guy from earlier. But he didn't have an angle on any of the workers in this area. But with that, I promise we'll stop talking about weird guard positions. Probably. From here on out, we can just assume that anyone in an odd spot is just slacking on the job. We now approach the end of the level, so I'll just sprint past this last trap, but I will trigger it to show that when you trip a trap, sometimes a gate will show up, impeding your progress unless you destroy the alarm. It's a neat feature to save you from having to listen to it blare throughout the rest of the level. Here we see the safe you get to open when you acquire all the clues. For this level, and most others, the clues are all along our path, so I'll just grab the last two now. But for levels where they're a bit out of the way, I'll probably edit in a montage to save you all the trouble of watching me backtrack through the level. That said, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. When you open the safes, Bentley normally has a fun bit of insight or a silly line dictating what he had to do to solve the puzzle. Unfortunately, we don't get that for this one.
Clues have led me to believe that the code for this vault is 792. Sly, you found a page from the Phoebius Raccoonus.
What we do get is our first quote-unquote upgrade. This is the fast dive. It is completely useless. The distance you gain from the jump is completely negligible compared to just swinging your cane around. But it's to be expected. See, the safe rewards aren't locked to any particular safe, but are representative of how many safes you've opened thus far. What I mean is that if you went to some other level and opened its safe before this one, then that safe would have the fast dive instead, and this would have some other upgrade. Much to the chagrin of my younger self, who tried to only unlock safes that contained useful upgrades so I could skip the garbage ones like this. Finally, to signify the level end, we have the treasure key. I'll discuss these more in depth in the next episode when they become more relevant, but for now, just know that collecting one of these keys plays one of the best sounds ever, and it never ceases to put a smile on my face. Thank you again for following along with me. It's nice to have someone's ear as I gush constantly over this phenomenal game. Next time, we're going to start exploring Raleigh's hideout proper. See you then.